Okay. Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Christina Strassfields, and I'm the Executive Director of the Southampton Art Center. On behalf of our board and staff, I'd like to welcome you today. I'm very excited because our mission statement is building community through the arts, and we're excited that you, our community, are here today, and so many of the artists of our community are here today to celebrate the artists from East End Collected8. I'm thrilled to be able to work with Patton Miller on this exhibition, who originated the idea and has done 7 of these on his own, and it was a pleasure to work with him putting it together. Patton, do you want to give them a little background on East End Collected?
Sure. Forgive me if some of you have heard this, but it's a good story. How you doing, Adam? It's a good story. I was minding my own business at home, and the phone rang, and I was invited to David Bonet's house, who lives on the pond. Concerned citizen about what to do with this building after the Parish Art Museum had moved to their new building in Watermill. So there was a get-together, a party at David's house, and I was the first person asked to address the crowd. And they said, well, there was the idea floated of doing an art center. And I said, well, in order to do an art center, and not to get all kumbaya about it, but I said, to survive, you have to be loved. And how do you do that? You do that by representing the artists of the area, which at times I felt are underserved, because there's only so many institutions out here. Not Guildhall, where Christina was. She was always in our corner.
Yes.
And we love her for it. So basically that was it. It was that simple. And I sat down and went home at the end of it. And about a month later, I got a phone call that said, okay, do it. Do one show. And I thought it'd be a one-and-done show. And it turned out to be so successful, they invited me back to do a second show. And then we did 3 and 4, all 1 year apart. And then after that, we went to a biennial schedule. And, well, the rest is history.
It's been a wonderful experience. When I came 2 years ago, Patton had already chosen all of the artists. Adam was one of the artists who was in the show. And it was wonderful. Artists that I knew, but a lot of artists that I didn't know. So for me, again, and I think it's been exciting for Patton as well, each of us brought artists that we were familiar with, some artists that we've known for a long time, but just happened to have not been included in this show, such as someone like Amy Zerner, who we both knew for forever, but had not been, she wasn't in the show. And so it was great to bring her in.
It was a mistake not to have her. but you know, it's funny, you can live in this town, and I had one artist that I saw at the Rogers Memorial Library. I said, this guy's work looks like John Graham. I mean, it was visionary stuff. And when I met him, he shook my hand like a man pumping water for about 5 minutes, thanking me for being in the show. Then he went promptly back into hiding, and I haven't seen him since. But his work was great, and I'd like to see him again. Does anyone know who I'm talking about?
So I think we're excited to, again, welcome all the artists. Patton and I, when we were picking out the work and picking out the artists, we felt that even though the work is so diverse, it would all come together if you had that high level. And I think that when you're looking around the room, you really can understand that. The work is completely different, but each is of an extremely high level, and it all comes together beautifully. So thank you so much to all the artists who've participated. So first question?
Oh, I just was talking to John Battle, and he told me that he rehearsed his answer with his wife last night at dinner. Because he says he hasn't really spoken much about his work. He just does it and doesn't really talk about it. I think that's probably pretty normal. But I would ask John, what's it all about? Now, John's work is the sculptures in the front. You're all nodding your head, so okay.
Well, first of all, it's great to be here, and thank you all for turning out. It's good to see a full house here. Yeah, it's true. I did ask Catherine to prep me. Let's see if we can give it a go last night. And I think it was a lot easier with a hot sake nearby. And now I find myself thinking, well, what did I say? Because she really liked that. What did I say?
Didn't she say it was the best conversation she's had with you in 35 years?
It was something like that. It was something like I hit a high bar. which says something.
Did I hang out the laundry?
Right? No, it's all right. That's all right. I don't know. What is it about? I have always, all my life, had a fascination with things, with objects. I've always found energy and power and excitement in things. As a little kid, whether it was toys that I had, things that I saved, things that I was keen on having and keeping. So I've always been a collector. But the things really had meaning to me, have meaning to me. I have things that I've carried with me for my whole life. I don't know why, I just do, and I love them. When I started, I studied art. My mother put me into art early on because I showed an interest. She was a great painter in her own right, and instilled in me a great love for art. I early on started collecting things, as I said. And when I got into school and when I got out of school and wanted to pursue sculpture, I just had this sense that I wanted to work with metal, and I've always had a love for metal. I gathered these things together and started collecting more things. And I found myself, I think, I'm trying to just give you some, I don't want to go on and on about it, but I want to give you a sense of it. I found myself in New Jersey near a shipyard where they were pulling apart Navy ships. And this was 1970. So these are ships that are too old to work anymore, so they've got to be out of the 20s and 30s, so maybe they served in World War I. Maybe some of them were from the Second World War. I don't really know. It's possible, 30 years on from the war. But I would go there, and I had an old truck, and I would go there, and for 20 cents a pound or whatever, 15 cents a pound, I'd pick through the yards and find these items that interested me shape-wise and design-wise, and go away with a bucket of metal, and gradually more and more of it migrated to my studio. And I found myself playing around in the two pieces that are in the center of that amazing spot that you've put my work in. It really is, I'm very grateful for that. Those two centerpieces are from the 80s, from early 80s with me. And they're all made from the galvanized metal from those shipyards, from that not shipyard, scrapyard. And I didn't realize, wasn't really interested in the energy of a military craft. It wasn't that. It was just that they were historic, they were old, they were meaningful in some way. I wasn't bringing in, what can I say about, World War II, or what can I say about, it wasn't that. It was the item itself. Somehow the shape and the beauty of the item itself came. But I can't deny that there's energy in it. That they're energetic pieces to me. You don't find quite the same energy in a mass-produced bottle. We use them, we throw them away, or we reuse them. But there's some things that speak to me with a certain energy and a certain power. And so playing with them, some of it is, where does it lead me? Where do those pieces lead me? How do they come together? How do they marry? One piece marries to another. How do they fit? How do they balance? How do they make something beyond themselves? That's exciting. That's one way in which it happens. Sometimes I go after it. I want something that has a certain reference point, and I'll try to push them into that direction. But much of it is, how do they speak to each other? How do they speak to one another? What comes of it? And sometimes I'm quite surprised by what I get. Sometimes I actually go after it. The family piece out there, there's a piece that's the woman is holding up the whole deal. Woman's at the base holding up the father who's up there with the barbells, very, very much he's the strong man, and off hanging on the side of the two children. That that's definitely an attempt to kind of, okay, I've got this piece of wood that is really like a dress. This feels like a feminine dress. It's a cork, a wooden cork from the shipyard, from the scrapyard. Okay, there's the dress, so there's the woman, there's the man, there's the kids. I'm actually going after something. I'm going after a story. But other times it's just the other one, the yonk, is a cable. What is it? I'm not sure what the name of it. Ken, what is it called? That holds a cable, that protects the cable from fraying. It's a giant one. That just appeared. It just appears. I go, oh, this is an ankh. This is it just came from somewhere else, not from me going after it. Just a quick aside, and then I'll stop. Because the yard is fascinating to me now, 40 years on, 50 years on actually. This place had everything that's over there, all those pieces in those sculptures, the old ones, were massive. There were piles of each one. And there'd be spindles or items that were this big, but also items that were this big. It's the same item, but in various scales. So there would be a mound of these things that were massive. And I didn't have any money, and I didn't have a truck that could carry any of it. But I knew that these things the things that I made, it was almost like these were maquettes. And I also thought if I could go back and I could do the same thing, But it's long. The scrapyard's long gone. The metal's long gone. It's all been sold off. And anyway, so that's where my journey began with things. Some of that out there is an example of 40 years ago, and some of it's a little more recent one. The crutch one is a couple of months ago, and that crutch piece. It's again, there's a energy in the crutches. I went to East Hampton used to have a pretty good swap and shop kind of deal at the recycling center. That you could actually go and people would leave something nice, and you could pick it up and take it away. They don't let you do that now. It goes into the hole, I think. Those crutches were there. They must have cleaned out. One of the hospitals must have had a big cleanup, and they went into a closet that hadn't been touched in 60 years. These were crutches from the turn of the last century. They're old crutches, They feel like it to me. I don't have a dating. Don't know for sure. But that's another example of I kept those crutches. Took a lot of heat from my friends who knew that I had these. What are you doing with all these crutches, John? What's wrong with you? But then I went in, and Patton asked me to do this show and be in this show, and he said, "You don't have to do anything new, John." Because when you asked me, I had about a month to go, and you said, I said, "God, that's great. I've got a little time. I'll see if I." You said, "You don't have to do anything new." I imagine you take with your paintings might take months for you to.
It's always different. Some go quick, some don't go at all.
Well, but at any rate, that was my first thing was, whoa, make something. And I went to my storage place, and it was a crazy moment where I just looked over at these crutches I've had forever. I've had them for 30 years. And over here, this wagon, I just looked at that, put it on the table, and bound it up with a rope. And I thought, well, this can't be. It can't be. This isn't right. I should quickly say I've had a hiatus of full-on art. I was full-on as an artist until 1985, came out here, started a business doing metalwork. And then I went for nearly 40 years as a blacksmith, creating, but doing things functional for people. Keeping my hand in the art with benefits and trying to get, every year I do something, just try to keep it going, stake my little flag that I'm an artist. And this thing with the crutches, I go, no, come on, this is, John. But I'm going to put the picture. He said, give me a few pictures and I'll triage your work. We'll pick what we want in the show. Put the crutches in the show. I'm just going to throw it in there. What the heck? And he picked it. And not only that, but he picked it and put it right there. You come in the front door, it's like, holy crap.
Well, Christina has something to do with that.
Well, Chris, no, forgive me.
Yeah.
I think you've done an amazing job. The way you set this show up is amazing to me.
Thank you.
And I'm biased, of course. You gave me this wonderful piece of real estate at the beginning. You know,
I think
but
that
it
with
is
the
good.
show, it's very important that each artist has their own space, and I think that's a key, especially in a group show. And I think all of the work is really, I think you have a chance to look at it and really, enjoy it in and of itself. And I think
Yep.
that's a key element for it. So,
Well, you
great.
did a great job, and
Great.
I thank you for
2 years ago, when Christina helped me put together East End Collected 7, it was 7, right?
7.
Yeah. We moved things around quite a bit, and it was funny when you finally get, and it happened with this show too, and it happens with all the shows. You just have to be patient, and there's a moment where it's like the lotto ball drops. That's it. That's right. And there's a lot of moments where it's not quite right, and you got to kind of push things left and push things right.
Robin, do you want to tell us a little bit about your journey?
Okay. Well, my journey started a long time ago with art. I think I'm just one of those people that from the earliest time I can remember, I was a maker of things. And I think in this room, Christina, you're probably the person I've known the longest. I met Christina when I came here in 1986. And
87 is when we met?
87 is when we met, so she was at Guildhall, and so we go back a really long way, and I would say I'm a maker of all things. I am a teacher at the Bridgehampton School, where I've been teaching art for 20 plus years. My predecessor's here today, Kathleen McLaughlin. She was the teacher before me, and so if I'm not making things, I'm helping other people make things, my students, and mostly young people, but occasionally I teach adults as well. My experience with working with ceramics, which is what I have here in this exhibition, started probably, well, when I was 35. So I started working with clay when I was 35. I had not worked with clay before then. And once I started working with clay, I never really looked back. And clay became like a magical medium for me. So I had always been an artist at heart, and I loved drawing and printmaking, and studied printmaking in college, and that was technical in a way. But I started studying clay because I wanted to become certified to teach art. I needed to figure out a way to earn a living, and I had a small child at home, and I kept thinking, well, how am I going to have a career where I'll have a little bit of time this summer and to be able to spend with my child and still make a living. And so I sort of sat on the idea of what am I going to do, what am I going to do, what am I going to do for months, and then I finally figured it out. And I went back to school here when Stony Brook, Southampton was LIU, and I got my certification to become a teacher. And that's when I met Kathleen McLaughlin, who was the art teacher at Bridgehampton before me, and she was my supervising teacher when I learned to become a teacher. And then she retired, and I took over at Bridgehampton School, and I've been there ever since, 20 plus years. So I spend a lot of time teaching, and I spend a tremendous amount of time learning how to make things so that I can teach people how to make them. And in the process, I try a lot of things, but clay is my medium of choice. And the work that I have here, I don't really, it's hard for me to describe it in words. It is, my inspiration was kind of like somewhere between like a vase and an amphora. I was looking at a lot of ancient shields. I was thinking about talismans. I was thinking about a feminine, some type of language of symbols that was feminine somehow. So the work that I have here, they look a bit like vases or amphoras, I think, and they also look a bit like, to me, like a shield, like that somebody would wear, like over like a breastplate or something, like some kind of a protective shield. And they're decorated, kind of like decorated like you would decorate icing on a cake. That's the way I think of it. There's flowers and there's birds on some of them, and they're not really meant to be representational, but they clearly have a lot of symbolism in them, and they're just that's just what I need to make. It's like a catharsis for me. It's hard for me to actually talk about why I do it. I need to do it, so I do it because I need to do it. I have to make things. I know Seth knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, I'm a maker of all things, and I'm most relaxed when I'm making things. So it's really me.
In clay, did you go through a blowing up phase? Because that stopped me. Everything I made
went
blew
through a
up.
blowing up phase, yes, and everybody goes through a blowing up phase.
Okay.
But I learned, and I learned a much more teaching than I learned making. So, like for example, one summer I did a class, and Seth was in the class actually at the Art Barge, and I learned from the director of the barge, Chris Cohan, that I could fire extremely slowly, and I could avoid almost any explosions. And so we had a system where we would fire on a Friday afternoon, and the firing would last until Sunday night. So that's how slow it went. It was like a 12-hour soak at just to dry things out, and then a really slow firing. And I found that if I did that not only would my work not blow up, but that even work that had been made that would normally blow up would blow up. Although when I did that class that year, there was a mismatch between the clay and the firing temperature, which I didn't understand. They had ordered clay that was really not made for high fire, and so we had some problems, but it's technical. The technical part takes a while to learn, but when you start firing other people's work, you get really careful because it's very devastating for me and them. Yeah.
I just want to say that it's so important. The art community out here is inspired by teachers, Kathleen and Robin and so many other art teachers. Our programs are not as extensive as they should be. I was on the school board for Southampton for 9 years, and I was always advocating for more for the arts. But I think that you've inspired generations, and we thank you for that.
I also have to say that my sweetheart, Aurelio, he helps me mount everything that I make, and that my work looks better because he helps me to present it. He's really good.
Aurelio's work is just behind you, and Aurelio, you'll be speaking in 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. I think it's in 2 weeks. Well, we'll check the calendar.
Don't skip it.
No, great. Setha, can you share?
My path is a little different, actually quite a bit different, except that the only thing I have to resonate with everyone is that I also started as a ceramist and did ceramics for 20 years, and it's really that I got so tired, not just of blowing things up, of everything breaking. It was devastating to have my work break, but so I've kind of moved on, but let me go to the beginning. I grew up in a house in Los Angeles with a lot of art, and my mom kind of dabbled in painting, and my sister and stepfather, And everyone had decided in the family, I always wanted to be an artist, but they had decided I wasn't going to be an artist, that I was smart and that I would go on to graduate school and do what I was supposed to do. So I think tried like once, like when I was very young, did a lot of really creative things. But by high school, I was really pretty much put in my box and told to go over there. And some of you may have experienced that in your life, told that, that I should be doing something else, certainly not art. But there must have been a seed or something in there, and I went on. I became I'm a cultural anthropologist, and I do teach and do research in lots of exotic cultures and see a lot of wonderful objects and things. So I was kind of a collector in a way. I was thinking about your collecting. But somewhere mid-career or towards even later career, something was missing. I was very, productive anthropologist, traveling, giving lectures, writing books, whatever, all that stuff. But there was something really lost. And I desperately needed, and again, Robin kind of knows that, I needed something else. And I didn't know what it was, but I thought I needed something to calm down. That was my first thought, something to calm me down. And so I went to the clay studio, and that's where I want to say something that is so profound. Had I not lived in this community here in the East End, I would never have been able to become an artist. It's because we do have classes, and we have communities, and we have supportive people, and we have institutions that this network of art spaces and the social and emotional support allowed me, who was an academic, to claim and become an artist and to keep working and to be supported in a way that it was really possible to grow even later in life. Because again, as I said, that door had been shut, and that what we need is so important. What Christine and Peyton and what all of you do is to keep these doors and these spaces open for everyone, because it allows us to find our way. So anyhow, I ended up in a clay studio, and like Robin, my first reaction to clay, of course, was I had also been an archaeologist, so I had dug up 3,000-year-old pots. So to make a pot the same way that the pots that I had been digging up were made just sort of blew me away. I had this sense of continuity that I was part of this, right, we're all not, many of you are nodding, part of this long, long history of not always women, but women in the cases of the vessels that I was looking at, and here I was doing it myself. And I connected to all of them, and it gave a kind of profound underpinning to the academic work, which was often about excavating the past too, or seeing how the past is present. But it gave me a physical, sensual, energy-filled, almost spiritual may not be, but a real sense of something else that I wasn't getting. And it was that kept me going, and that I know Christina actually asked me to show my ceramics. How many years ago was that? It was certainly 10 years ago. But I did ceramics for a very, very long time, and I loved it in that it had this archaic, old, connected, physical, childlike thing, and it allowed me to interact directly with the material. And I would say that's, for me, the most important thing of everything, is that I go to art to not think. I mean, you were talking about planning some pieces and not. I can't. This is my place that's separate, that's emotional, that's unconscious, that's in which my body and whatever the material is, in which we get to interact. And there is a kind of joy and a play and a sense of flow, I guess, or sense of something that I had never really ever experienced. And people would say, how did you do that? And I too don't know how to explain how I do it, in that it's simply me and the clay having this relationship. And what, of course, happens is that relationship produces objects that can tell you some things about yourself. So for me, the art wasn't so much for you, but for me to see what was going on inside of me. So a little bit on the, I don't know, self-reflexive side. And there's still this anthropologist out there being analytic and looking at it and going, oh my God, you know, what are you trying to do here? But over time, anyhow, I love ceramics. I loved it. But things would break all the time. And because they were so much part of me, I found it really devastating emotionally. Just couldn't really handle it. And so I began to use the wonderful resources that we have again and take classes with different people in different mediums. And the sculpture, the metal sculpture was my idea. I really see myself as a sculptor, but I also began to paint, and the power of the painting, and I'm also a printmaker. And people say, well, why so many mediums? Only thing I can say is that it doesn't really matter to me what the medium is, as long as I can engage with it in a non-thinking, an emotional, I don't know the right word, you know, in an embodied way, in the sense of it's me and my body. And like the sculpture, you know, I bend with my body. It's not as technical as I would like it to be, but it's really important that my body be present. And now that I'm painting, I felt like something different was happening, but then as Christine told me, there's my sculpture right there in my painting. But when I paint, I'm often moving and dancing, and just like I would be with the ceramic or the metal, I would be, again, it's very embodied. But what's so wonderful about using different materials that I find is it tells you different things. So my ceramics are pretty, a lot of them are really deep and about women's being oppressed and lots of, you know, dark political things. But when I got to wanting to make dancing figures running across the lawn in metal, I knew something new was happening. So the material maybe interacts with me in a way to let me express something that's different. And for that reason, I find using different materials allows me to express different parts of what I'm feeling, or the many kinds of people that we all are, which is, again, because I think my art is a lot about that, and includes a lot of the social issues that I deal with the rest of my life, but also allows me to stay embodied in the picture.
Thank you all. That was amazing.
Setha, that's a hands-on sculpture, right?
It is a hands-on sculpture.
Meaning that kids can knock it around and
It was
yeah.
They
Okay.
were made to go.
I'm making Christina nervous with that.
Absolutely.
I know, but I originally made these because I wanted children running across the lawn in my backyard. And these don't tarnish, and then birds sit on them in the rain and the snow. And you can just put garden stakes down to hold them in the grass, and then they'll blow in the wind and everything. I wanted something, it's the friendliest, lightest thing I have ever done in terms of, if you look at my other work, it's obviously the little girl trying to get out. On the other hand, I did add some of that, I saw Brillo at TJ Maxx, you know, that's how it happened. I saw a big box of Brillo, and I thought, so it's a question of, do you think that's Spanish moss on a street, or do you think it's, I call it dendrites, do you think it's the deterioration, Dendrites like nerve cells, and yes, like the deterioration, yes, a deterioration of the nerve cells as only some of us age in this.
There's a wonderful energy to the piece, but when Setha brought it in, she said, "Oh, I'd like the children to touch it." I was like, "Oh, no, not here."
It really moves though, right?
But you can move it, and we can show you, we can show this group, but we just don't want everybody touching it. But a wonderful interaction between the sculpture and the painting, and we were very excited about having that.
Oh, the painting's amazing, and the sculpture is too, and the way they interact, it's really very beautiful. I've not seen that much.
No.
You don't, usually painters are, I mean, there's plenty of painters who sculpt a lot too, but you seem to have been able to do both and have the same lyrical energy in both of them. I mean, they really are a pair.
Thank you. I would have never seen him that way if it weren't for Christine, everyone, so you have to thank her, not me.
Oh, you mean it wasn't intentional?
No.
Oh, isn't that interesting? I didn't know that. Well, you went to the studio and
No,
said,
no, I did them from the material.
Just like
From the-
John.
just like John.
I sent
Yep.
her, these are both quite recent, one a year old, one, recent. This is recent, and I knew Christine probably wanted ceramics, but I was saying, well, I was being brave, right?
Right.
Show you new work.
Yep.
Communication. And I sent her a list, and I wasn't going to put any sculpture in at all. And then I thought, oh, I know Christine likes sculpture. I'll put one wild sculpture, and she'll never pick it. And sure enough, she found a picture and a sculpture to go together.
well, the painting's a blueprint for the sculpture, apparently, but it's not.
It's not.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you.
Robin, you talked about, Setha talked about things breaking. And I know that in your work, you have that beautiful gold line in the piece, even though the piece is not broken,
It
correct?
is broken.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It was broken. That is the largest piece, single piece that I ever tried to fire. And I didn't have a huge kiln, so it was as big as the kiln would handle. And, it went across 2 shelves, if you know what a kiln is like. They have, most of them have shelves that you stack. And the shelves were split in half, and so they weren't exactly even, I don't think. And so there's 2 pieces for every shelf, and so it had to be laid across the entire thing. And I don't know if that was the reason why it cracked, or it was just that I maybe didn't make it strong enough, but it was broken when it came out, and it was kind of like a very detailed, very complicated work for me. And I had put a lot of work into the hand building of it, and so I decided that I would try to do the kintsugi repair. And so I started doing a lot of Googling on how to do that, and I found epoxy paste, and I filled the cracks with epoxy paste. I put everything back together, and then I painted it with red enamel, and then I had inherited a collection of really, really incredible, beautiful gold leaf and gold dust from Aurelio's aunt, who was a really, really wonderful artist, Lydia Buzio, and she had died recently at that point. And so I had all this gold, and it's real gold that I painted over the red enamel. And so that was I was determined to make the sculpture live somehow. It was in like 3 pieces, and yeah, I put it back together again. The back was broken up too. If you see the back, you could tell more. But yeah, it's something that you can do just for decorative purposes. But generally speaking, it's a tradition of a Japanese tradition. You probably know more about this than me, Saka. Japanese tradition of taking broken pieces and then putting them back together to create something that's even more beautiful than the original.
Exactly. Which is
basically, yeah. So that was why the gold leaf is on there, and it's real gold, actually. Yeah.
What?
Oh, I thought you had another question. I just want to say that again, I love the art historical references that are in all your work. So John, the Ankh, the Ankh symbol that's there, and immediately I love Egyptian art, and I've always loved Egyptian art. So all of these references to art history in all of your work I think it really resonates, and I think our community has such a history, from, being from the early 19th century artists who were out here to the, to the realists and the abstract expressionists. All the groups going forward have really just, enhanced our community so much, and I think that all of you are so aware. Can you talk, each of you maybe talk a little bit about, I know that Seth talked a little bit about how the community affected her. How about the changes that we've seen in our community in the years that we've been here? Does anyone want to take a lead on that?
In what way?
In terms of like the art community that was here probably when, I don't know, when you first came out, John, and the difference that you see now.
When did you come out, John? You said it before, but I forgot.
Well, I summered out here all my life, so
Okay.
we were in Sagaponack in the 50s, but I moved out here 85 from the city. I had a studio in New York and lost my lease and came out this way and decided to live out here. I'm not a good, I can't answer that question very well because I've always been an outsider in terms of the art world, the art scene. I've never been in it. I've been sort of...
Not anymore.
Well, I know,
Yeah.
kind of circling around it. I know a lot of people who are artists here, but because I was lost in my business for so long, I didn't have the pulse that one would have going to openings, going to shows, seeing their work, who's moved in, who's moved out. I can't speak to that.
I love that, John, though, that you bring up that, and Robin too, that we all kind of have day jobs.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if, and that, right?
Yeah, we
we
do.
all need a way to make a living. Patricia and I have so many, we all have day jobs, or many of us have day jobs. And there are some of our artist friends who make a living at it full-time, but for lots of us, we have day jobs, which I would argue makes the proliferation of the numbers of institutions that we have now so much more valuable, because the less time you can spend with other artists, whatever. In other words, having to have a real career of some other sort and not be able to be a full-time artist, I think makes it really, really difficult to keep in touch with each other. I mean, John says he's an outsider. I would certainly say I feel like an outsider. Robin, I don't know.
I'm kind of an outsider. I mean,
Yeah.
I have my own, I spend a lot of time teaching kindergarten through 12th grade art, and there is, that's exhausting.
Yeah.
But I still will go home or stay late and make more stuff, because I just can't stop making things. It's just a disease.
So I'm going to do a plug for another institution because, again, I think that the member show at Guildhall is where I first saw Setha's work. I think that was I first saw your work there, and I fell in love with it. And so, again, having the opportunity to show in a lot of these group shows, I know sometimes it's not always exactly the way you want to exhibit your work. I think Patricia's work I first saw there, Joyce's work I first saw there. So having that opportunity to just have your work out there and people see it. Again, okay, I was curating the show, so again, it was wonderful. But again, these pieces came to me. And I got to know the artists through their work and follow their work over the years. So I do say that it's a really great opportunity for artists to participate in these kind of activities. Jury shows as well, if you can get in. But it gives you exposure, and exposure is what a lot of artists need to have. I've known Patton forever because you were, you were already in the collection when I came to Guildhall, but you participated in shows, and you still, always, were around for that. And that in and of itself is an important rallying
That's what I'm
point,
trying to
a
say.
really important rallying point, because artists get a chance to meet one another again and to
Ashwell
discuss
Hall.
things.
And Ashwell Hall.
And Ashwell Hall,
We now
absolutely.
have more. Now we have Duck
We
Creek.
do.
Yeah,
There's
we have
so many
have
great.
more and more places to show, and East Hampton Artists Alliance, Southampton Artists Alliance. I mean, constantly encouraging everyone. I mean, I know that there's a kind of hierarchy of where you put your work and all of that, but on the other hand, if you want people to see your work and meet others, this is the way to do it. And you have collectively created a space for us that allow us to next. So if John comes back, now John, you're back. You got pulled right back in. But
Yeah.
but the space has been building
No, it's true.
since in that period of time, because I kind of watched it grow and grow and grow because I was the beneficiary of that.
I think one of the hardest tricks out here is not the work, but finding a place to make the work. When I came here in '74, I used to walk around and knock on people's doors and ask them if I could use their barn. And I ended up working in Fairfield Porter's studio for 23 years, just by asking. And now, if you ask, they release the hounds.
Yeah.
That's probably true.
Yeah. No, I think it's a very tough thing for artists out here now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just the cost of living there, it's really difficult. And, artists say, I want to invite you to my studio or whatever, but I work in my kitchen. It's like, that's okay. Wherever you're working is fine, as long as you're working and you're passionate about your work. I think that's such an important aspect of going forward with it. Great. So what does everyone feel about trends in art and things that are happening nowadays? I'm always curious, and then we have a group of artists. Do you feel that there are any trends that are bad for artists, movements that have hindered artists nowadays, have sort of pushed certain artists ahead and pushed other artists back?
Before you answer, I want to just add to that. Christine and I had a conversation. I said, I think isms are dead. And I think now, instead of people joining clubs, everybody's on their own. I think that's a good thing.
You think that's good?
I think that's a good.
Unless what?
Unless you call it pluralism.
You're saying it's good, though?
I do think it's good.
That we're on our own, not
Yeah.
groups.
You're not
Yeah, instead of having to be a fifth-generation cubist.
But does that mean one of the things that I yearn for is collectivity of people to interact with. Did it not, you're thinking about being in a lineage, but what about collectivities of people? Patricia and we used to take workshops, right, with Dennis, and I don't know. So, but that wasn't an ism.
That's not what I mean.
Yeah.
I think we still have a community. Proof of it is what's happening here. But, going in lockstep with some sort of...
Right, so we're not all abstract expressionists, we're not all figurative
Yeah.
artists, we're not all, realists, all of those different, categories, isms that we
Right.
have.
Ann Porter, Fairfield Porter's widow, told me she was on a bus once, and who was that art critic of the 50s that was such a powerful... Yeah, Greenberg got on the bus and knew Ann and sat down next to her and said, your husband's barking up the wrong tree. Because Fairfield Porter is a figurative painter. Now that just seems short-sighted to me. Not to throw Clement Greenberg off the building, but I did.
Well, I also think, sometimes I feel like this may be the wrong thing to say, but it feels sometimes like everybody's an artist now. Like there's so many people that are doing art and all different kinds of art, and it's a little confusing sometimes.
It's a crazy job, so it does wean out a
yeah,
lot of people. It's not an easy lifestyle.
Anybody can call themselves an artist. I just don't know what.
Where
Yeah.
that designation is.
Yeah, I'm not really
That's
sure.
interesting, yeah.
I'm not sure.
And the thing for me, it has trends. I was at the Perez Museum, which is in Miami, and all of the art, all of it was conceptual and political. There probably wasn't, and it was so driven by oppression, inequality, not injustice. These are things that I write about, but I realized there was almost no breathing room in there for, I don't know. That felt really constrained. I'm trying to imagine my work or within the need to right the wrongs of our complicated and historical, political, and social past, of which I'm very sympathetic. But to have that as, you asked about trends, if that's what contemporary art is right now, then where does that put me? Or how is it that I can articulate?
How does it matter to you, though? Why does it matter?
I don't know. I felt, That's a really good question, John. I don't know. I felt, I was trying to take it in and try to understand it and and get myself involved in that conversation. And I guess, because I think art is also conversation.
Yeah.
And I was trying to understand how I could place myself within that conversation and still be myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, in a way. But why do you want to place yourself in that conversation?
I think like what I relate completely.
I don't know, I'm just,
Yeah.
When you're going to the Whitney Biennial nowadays, and sometimes there is such a strong theme, and again, if your work, it's all one theme usually, even though the work is diverse, but if your work doesn't fit into that theme, you're not in the show. And I feel that sometimes we were talking about that, it's sort of pushing you into this one, this is what's acceptable, and that's the only thing that's acceptable, or that's the only thing that's going to be acknowledged nowadays.
I think it's all about freedom. Freedom to be exactly who you are.
That's what John said.
yeah.
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 Right, right.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say that a good example, I think, of this is Eric Fisher, because he came out with that whole group from CalArts in California, and they were all conceptualists. They had Salvatore, they had Ross Flechter,
Right.
and he wanted to do, and felt compelled to do, figurative work. And everyone thought at the time figurative work was dead.
Yeah.
I mean, figurative work was of the past. It wasn't what painting was about. And he went ahead and he wanted to tell stories with figurative work. And he made that, a very legitimate category. And he was very criticized for it going up, and it wasn't accepted. Of course, he's had great acceptance, but that's a good example of not being in the ism and not being following what everyone else is doing. Anyway, I just wanted to.
But carrying on,
Good example.
but carrying on.
Yeah, because he's a member of the community too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anyone else have questions from the audience that they'd like to pose to any of the artists?
And don't be shy, please. We like the questions
We like
part.
questions.
Yeah.
We encourage questions. Anyone? Okay, well then I'm going to say, do the artists have any final statements they want to make about anything?
No, just thank you so much for including me, and it's really wonderful to be in this amazing space and with such a great community.
Yeah, I feel the same. Just thank you so much. And so nice to have new friends and colleagues and be part of a community, because for me, part of art is the community, is that collectivity. I think that feeds me probably more than anything. That's really, so I'm so appreciative, both of being included, but of all the people who are here.
Thank you. So again, Joyce, Brendan's
Joyce
here.
is here.
Aurelio, Georgia. Any other artists that I'm missing? Please come back, pick up the schedule. Each of the artists is going to be talking. We have this great opportunity so you can hear each of the artists talk about their work in a similar format that we're doing today. I think that each one of them is going to really enlighten us, and they're all amazing. So I'm looking forward to talking with them as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.